Welcome to the MLB Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden, taking a look at tonight's 14-game slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. Absolutely monstrous pitching slate. Just so many aces, even mid-tier options on this one. It's made it pretty hard to find some offenses.
Yeah, there are a lot of pitchers that we're going to get into, a lot that are really, really good cash game plays, a lot that have really, really high ceilings and some excellent tournament options. And one less bat to worry about now that Hanley is gone.
Yeah, some pretty big news just came out. Hanley designated for assignment. We were talking, just before it happened about, Mitch Moreland potentially get some more at bats, what they're going to do, and well, we figured it out.
I think Boston solved that problem.
Yeah, and I mean, it is kind of the right move there, getting Moreland in the lineup over Hanley.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been the right move tonight, but it's definitely going to happen now.
Yeah, so it's nice. We don't have to really say if Moreland gets into the lineup anymore.
Nope.
First game here, this is not an indicator of the pitching tonight, but Joe Musgrove versus John Gant, Pittsburgh taking on St. Louis. I know you like some of the Pirates lefties here, fairly cheap against Gant, the guy just middle of the road, right-hander. I don't mind some bats in this game, but more so on the Pirates side.
Yeah, I am definitely interested in the Pirates bats here for sure against John Gant. Like this season, 336 WOBA allowed, 150 ISO allowed to lefties, but dating back to last year, 373 WOBA allowed, 227 ISO allowed. This is a very, very, very good spot for these lefties, and I think they're going to go overlooked here. If you want to dig in, like Polanco is in an excellent spot. I mean, 183 ISO, 317 WOBA against right-handed pitching dating back to last season. Dickerson, a lot of power, 217 ISO, but like Austin Meadows has absolutely been raking so far. He's got like a 250 ISO, 475 WOBA split so far this season against righties. We're dealing with a very limited sample, but yeah, this is a good spot for the lefties. Like I love Meadows down at the bottom of that lineup, and then Polanco mashes absolutely rakes against changeups. He's got like a 302 ISO against it, and that changeup is something that Gant has kind of struggled with this season.
Yeah, I definitely like some of these guys here, especially because, I'm not going to be too picky, especially with like ballparks and things like that. Like you're going to have to overlook a few of these kind of negative things just because there aren't a lot of offenses in great spots tonight. But yeah, I like the Pirates here, like you said. Moran, Bell, interesting options as well.
Yeah, I really, really like that stack. Like you get DeBell, Dickerson, Moran, Meadows, like murderer's row of power against righties down there towards the bottom of the lineup, and it's a good spot for those guys.
Other side of things here, Musgrove, obviously a guy, younger arm, has flashed some talent at times. First start back in a while, I don't mind using some Cardinals bats, but it's not my favorite spot in the world here.
I don't mind taking a shot on Musgrove in tournaments against the Cardinals offense that like has struggled at times this season. Like there's some strikeouts for sure in that lineup. And Musgrove is a guy that we have seen like he's a little bit above league average as far as strikeouts go, but obviously you get a little bit of a park boost. He's 4K on DraftKings. Like if you're trying to fit in like Boston and like Coors or something like that, like he's an interesting, at least cheap option to consider, I think.
And the good thing is he seems, stretched out. He's pitched into the sixth inning or 5 innings in a couple of minor league rehab starts. So I'm not too worried about like a pitch count here either. At 4K, you really need 5 innings at least anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're wanting to stack against him or take some bats against him, I would be looking at Tommy Pham, like Jose Martinez and Tyler O'Neill as the top options. The righties have been the ones that have given him problems dating back to last season in his innings, 200 ISO, 345 WOBA to the handedness. So I'd be looking at those guys, and then maybe like Pena down as like a cheaper catcher option who he's got a ton of power against righties, like 234 ISO. And 48 plate appearances.
Yeah, hitting the ball hard. Yeah, I don't mind him. He's still super cheap. It's 2.9. So, yeah. I think Musgrove is interesting at 4K and GPPs.
Yeah, because I think especially on like DraftKings and probably I don't know what his price is on FanDuel. Let me pull that up. He is 5,500. Like, I don't know that people would go there on FanDuel, but like on DraftKings, I think like Romo is going to be the popular like 4K guy, and he's a guy that's only going to go like one, maybe 2 innings, and so like I think Musgrove obviously has the potential to go deeper in this game.
Oh yeah, because Romo's got to pitch tomorrow too and Sunday.
Yes, you're joking, but you're being sarcastic. But he's actually, I think he's scheduled to pitch tomorrow or Sunday.
This is unbelievable. Maybe Hanley can pitch.
Maybe.
Next game here, we got LA and New York. Luis Severino taking on Andrew Heaney. Severino, obviously one of the talented pitchers on the slates. I definitely don't mind him. He's cheap. He's 11, well, cheaper in consideration to what we have seen Severino at. He's a huge home favorite. I have some strikeout upside still against a team that doesn't usually strike out a ton. We saw it last time out. I don't mind going with him. He's not my favorite of the aces. I don't think he really cracks like even top 3 or 4 for me here tonight, but I don't mind him.
I prefer him in tournaments. He's not someone that I would be looking at in cash games, but like I do like him as a pivot off the other chalky. Like I say chalky, but like I don't think any of these high-priced arms are going to be overly owned. But he's a guy. I mean, he's got that filthy slider, and that's a pitch that the Angels struggle against. They kind of struggle against these like super high velocity fastballs, and that's another pitch that he throws. He has in his arsenal. Like, I think it's a fine spot for him. You're worried a little bit. Obviously, you had to face Mike Trout and some of these and Upton in a somewhat decent hitting environment tonight. I think it's supposed to be pretty warm. But like, I don't know. I think he's a fine tournament option here.
Yeah, I do too. Like he's going to face a fair amount of right-handers. I mean, dating back to last year, 106 ISO, 246 allowed. I mean, elite strikeout stuff. 28% to righties, 29% to lefties. Like he's up in that tier now, like of just an elite arm. And I don't worry too much about him. Like definitely not a guy that I'm picking on here. Like you said, he's definitely a tournament guy. There's a few other options rather going cash.
Yeah, exactly.
New York side of things against Heaney. Heaney, obviously a guy dating back to last year, get up a lot of hard contact to righties, 302 ISO to right-handers. But I don't know. I'm not exactly just loading up on Yankees bats here.
I'm throwing last year out the window because it was such a small sample size. Like let me pull it up real quick, but like I know it was very, very few innings, like maybe 12. Last season that he pitched and had those issues in. So let's see, 2017, 21 innings. So like he's still a high strikeout arm, and he has not shown this season the issues with power. I mean, he's given up like a 160 at ISO, 301 WOBA to righties. He had a good outing against this same Yankees team, a couple weeks ago, and he gave up two runs, one of those earned. Like, this is a spot, like, I think the Yankees are going to be super popular because it's, Yankees versus lefty. I'm not as high on the Yankees as I think the field will be. There's still a couple that I definitely don't mind using. But, like, I don't really see myself paying up for, like, the Stantons and the Sanchez's and the Judges tonight.
No, I don't either. Just you're looking at some of these contact numbers against curveballs, and it's just not great. And that curveball's been really, really good this year. I mean, 47% whiff rate on it. And there's just, there is strikeouts in this lineup. I think the only guy that I really have interest in if he's back in the lineup is Gary Sanchez, just because he matches up well against sinkers and also matches well up against the changeup as well. But he's about it. I'm kind of with you. Like, I don't see myself paying like 5.3 or 5K for Judge or Stanton. One, I don't feel like I need to tonight, just especially with the pitching options on board.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. The guy that I do find myself getting a decent amount of exposure to is Gleyber Torres. Dude's just been absolutely on fire. I really don't know what else to say about him at this point. Like, he's got home runs and 3 straight games. He's got 4 homers across that span. He's got like 6 over his last 10 games. Just excellent numbers against lefties and decent numbers in a very limited sample against curveballs. So he's the guy I think I have my eye on the most.
Yeah, definitely don't mind that. His price up there a little bit, but I mean, deservingly so. This dude's been mashing.
Yeah, for sure.
Next one here, you got Toronto and Philly. Sam Gaviglio over Zach Eflin. I don't mind some bats in this game. I kind of talked myself into a little bit of a Philly stack, but for some reason I don't like stacking against Gaviglio either. So I'm in a little bit of a pickle here.
Yeah, like we've seen two entirely different pitchers when it comes to Sam Gaviglio. Like last season, absolutely terrible, got blasted, gave like a over 215 ISO to both sides of the plate, had like a 16% strikeout rate. And then we have this year's version, 29% strikeout rate and a sub 100 ISO allowed to both sides of the plate. He's changed up his pitch mix a little bit. He kind of stopped throwing that curveball as often, and he's relying a little bit more on it, like a two seam sinker and his slider. Um, again, this is a spot where I think he's a viable like tournament value option if you want to go there. He's again one of these cheap guys. He's like 5K. I don't hate the price for him. There are a couple bats that I am a little bit worried about in that lineup, but like I think he's a viable option as far as like cheap pitchers goes.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some upside here, and like you said, he has been changed a little bit. I think we see some. I don't think that sinker will hold that 202 Woba a little bit for that long, just given the hard contact so far this season. But yeah, I'm not thrilled with I like some of these Philly bats. Like I don't mind like Odubel Herrera here again. I don't know, Rhys Hoskins. I think I might take a wait and see approach until he gets going a little bit. We look at a guy who will throw that slider, and I think that takes me off Hoskins.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. And I'm looking right now, like you mentioned his sinker, like giving up a lot of hard contact, but I mean, a sinker, if it does what it's supposed to, it's hard contact getting hit straight into the ground.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily matter as much. I was trying to see if I could pull up his spin rates real quick on his sinker 20. He's got decent spin rate, so like I mean, it should be doing what it's doing, and people are going to hit it into the ground a little bit more. So I'm not as worried about it. But Aaron Altherr and like Carlos Santana would be the guys that I worry about the most.
Yeah, Santana's a guy that I like here. I mean, there are a couple bats that can get under a sinker a little bit here just because of their swings, but for the most part, I'm not. I can't get behind like the Phillies as much as I want to here.
No, I can't either. This offense is just terrible.
Yeah. Toronto side of things here against Eflin. Eflin's a guy who's pitched well. I don't exactly really love targeting him here outside of a couple of bats, but I don't know. It is a good spot for some of these lefties here.
Well, he did struggle. We finally saw the real Zach Eflin against the Cardinals. Gave up 4 runs, 2 earns, only struck out 4. He's still struggling against lefties. Like he's still giving up like a super high fly ball rate, like 51% and 250 ISO to left-handed hitters. So I love the Toronto lefties in this spot. Like right now, the projected lineup is not terribly appealing because there's not as many lefties in there as I would like. I would like to see them find a way to work in Yang Jervis Solarte and maybe like Dwight Smith over a couple of these guys, and I would be more interested in that stack. Those 2 guys are definitely interesting, but like Granderson's in a really, really good spot. He's got like a 308 ISO against that fastball that Eflin is throwing. And like a 229 ISO dating back to last season against righties. So I really do like him. And like I mentioned, Solarte, if he gets in the lineup, and Morales down towards the bottom of that lineup, he's actually been hitting a little bit better recently.
Yeah, definitely don't mind him. Smoke's another one, 368 ISO against that fastball, and he's still under 4K. A guy that should pop out here, I think, at some point very soon. I mean, still 202 ISO against righties this year, but still making a solid hard contact, and the contact rate is up this year. So I think Smoke's interesting in this spot too.
Yeah, I agree there.
Next one here, we got Baltimore and Tampa. David Hess take on Sergio Romo. I hate this game. Like, I absolutely hate it.
It might be David Hess. It might not.
I'm still not even sure. And it's one of these things where I just don't want, like, there's nothing to really game plan for.
No, like, if it is going to be David Hess, and, like, all indications are that it is going to be, but, like, it's still Buck is probably going to pull some BS or something, but right 5 minutes before the game. But I don't really have interest in Baltimore bats here because you're going to get like 1 inning of maybe 1 1/3 or maybe 2 of Sergio Romo, who has just been like lights out in his starts. and then you're going to get like 6 innings of Ryan Yarbrough, who has been pretty darn solid this season. So I don't really have interest in Baltimore bets unless you wanted to go with like Machado versus a lefty, but like Yarbrough is a guy that has struggled more against lefties this season. So I don't know that I want to go there. As far as Hess goes, like I have a lot of interest in the Tampa Bay righties because they're really cheap, and Hess has been really bad against righties.
Yeah, don't mind some of the Rays bats. It's just this ballpark. This is one of the ones I hate to kind of use, but I think we're kind of forced a little bit on this slate. Like I like Ramos, 3-3 is a cheap catching option. I don't mind Crone either. I mean, I don't hate Spam leading off either, like a cheap Joey Wendell. So I guess the front four here are very stackable.
It just depends on who gets in that lineup. Like I do like Crone is in an excellent spot here. Like I said, Hess, it's 435 ISO allowed to righties. Like we're dealing with a pretty small sample with him still, but like it's a lot of power to righties, and Crone does actually have power against right-handed pitching. So I like him. You mentioned Ramos in an interesting spot. Johnny Field down at the bottom of that lineup, 250 ISO against righties, and then like they're not projected to get in the lineup, but they could actually get in, and that'd be like the Willie Adames and Christian Arroyo. Like I'm not going to spew off their stats against right-handed pitching because it's like probably 5 or 6 plate appearances at this point, but like I do like those guys as value options.
Yep. Next one here, I got Boston and Atlanta. Julio Teheran taking on Eduardo Rodriguez. I don't have interest in either of these pitchers, do you?
Oh, I'm not touching any of these pitchers, no.
Yeah, this is a game I like for some offense. Let's start with this Atlanta side against Rodriguez. I don't mind getting some Albies exposure here.
I love Ozzy Albies in the spot. Obviously, he's raking against left-handed pitching, 302 ISO, 452 WOBA against him. Mashes those four-seam fastballs like 600 ISO against it. Like still dealing with a pretty small batted ball like profile as far as that goes, but it's a good spot for him. And Freddie Freeman, all these guys are really in play. Like Suzuki, I think I looked yesterday, like 3,200 for Kurt Suzuki is way too cheap. Like a lot of home run potential for him, and Tyler Flowers in the spot.
Yeah, I think like right now they're projected to both get in the line because one will DH here. So like you got some options. I like a Brave stack. I think Acuna is interesting as well as for two. I like the Freeman call. We've seen Rodriguez. I mean, 329 ISO or 329 WOBA to lefties, 177 ISO dating back to last year. Obviously does have some strikeout stuff, but still a fly ball guy. And he is a guy who can spell trouble every now and then.
Yeah, and like Markakis, that power against lefties, it's there for him this season, and like Erod's throwing that changeup like about 20% of the time. Markakis a 256 ISO against it.
Yeah, so I think like everyone's going to probably overlook the Braves as usual tonight, but I think even more so because I think Boston will be somewhat popular here as well.
Yeah, Boston's definitely going to be the more popular side of this game.
I mean, as they probably should here, like looking up against Teheran, a guy who's starting to go back to what he was doing late last year and earlier this season, struggling a bit. I don't mind targeting, either side of the plate here. I do like the lefties a little bit more, the Benintendis, the Devers. But obviously it would be insane to overlook like Martinez and Bogarts and Betts at this point. And I am going to get a Boston stack in here tonight. Like that run total over 6, it climbed last night. Teheran just doesn't have much right now.
No, and like the weather is definitely going to help. Like low 80s, it's warm for Boston standards. Wind blowing out like 15 miles per hour, and now we're pretty much guaranteed to get Mitch Moreland in the lineup, and Julio Teheran, who has been blasted by lefties, facing a power lefty like Mitch Moreland. Yeah, he's pretty much lock button in my lineups right now over some of the Coors guys. Just such a good spot for him tonight. And you mentioned like Andrew Benintendi. I do really like the spot against Teheran for him as well. He's got like a 429 ISO against Teheran's four-seam fastball, and one of these days JBJ is going to get off the schneid. This would be a great spot for him to do it. So yeah, like I don't mind taking a shot on him. Like I imagine he's pretty darn cheap at this point, like 3,100. So you could even look at him, and then you mentioned the righties. Don't overlook them. Like it would be dumb. Mookie Betts, I know he's 5,900, but like Tehran has struggled against righties too. So like 40% fly ball rate for him dating back to last season. So they're all in play, and whatever catcher, like if it's Babe Ruth, Leone, or what's their other one,
Vasquez.
Vasquez. Yeah, you could use him, and maybe Swihart starts getting some time.
God, I hope so. I mean, at least it's another body out of the way that maybe he can get in, but I don't know. He could be on a guy who leaves soon as well.
You would think they'd be like get as many plate appearances for him as possible, so like he could show off for a trade, but apparently they don't want to do that. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah, Boston's all in play here tonight. Next one here, you got Chicago and Detroit. Mike Fiers taking on Reynaldo Lopez. Both these pitchers, I think, are viable, cheaper GPP arms here tonight.
Yeah, I think everyone's gonna be like on the stack against Mike Fiers train, and that's fine. Like he is a fly ball pitcher. Like he has struggled with home runs a lot in his career. He's been a little bit better recently, and we already saw him like shut down this White Sox offense once this season. I don't hate taking a shot on him in tournaments. I don't hate some of the White Sox bats, but like Lopez is actually a guy I do have a decent amount of interest in if you're wanting to fade like the chalk stripling in that price range.
Chalk stripling. I'm okay. Well, we'll get to it, but I'm more than okay with it. But yeah, I like Lopez here. Wrote him up in the pitching article today. Just wanted to get some different names in there, and he was one of them. Obviously, a guy we like against, right-handed heavy lineups, which is the Tigers. Yes, they have a couple lefties in there, but none that really strike fear into me. None that really have a ton of power outside of like Goodrum. Walks, if he limits the walks, there's obviously potential here. He has 7 scoreless innings against Detroit last time out, but did obviously have the 5 walks. I think that can burn him at times. That really hasn't this season. But I don't think that game is tonight where like it all kind of, goes to hell.
Yeah, and like my biggest issue with him is the offense sucks, and like he might not get the win, and that's kind of tough if, especially on a slate like this. But like I still like him, and if you go back and look, like the games, I didn't pull like the lineups that he faced in the games that he actually had success in, but like I did pull his like pitch mix, and like the games where he had success, he just stopped throwing stuff other than his like forcing fastball. He was throwing it like 70% of the time in the games, in most of the games where he was really good, and stopped throwing the shit that's not working for him. And that's what he did last game. And so he had a good game last time out. So if he's going to do that again tonight, I do like him a lot in the spot.
Yeah, and that was against a pretty left-handed heavy Rangers team. Like, we know they suck, but it's still pretty impressive to do what he did.
Yeah, and also like the wind was blowing out in that game. Like I remember that when, because I pivoted off of him when I saw the weather, I was like, crap. And then he comes out and shuts him down.
I don't really have interest in picking him here, even with the lefties. Like, there's still better options.
Yeah, I'm not going near Detroit bats here.
Oh, and you mentioned Fiers, like, he's cheap, he's 6,100. A guy who's pitched, fairly well of late. I don't mind him, like, just because, they've struck out a ton. He's a cheap guy. He does have some strikeout upside. He throws just a ton of pitches as well. Like, I feel like he can't keep hitters off balance. He obviously doesn't have the most overpowering fastball in the world, but it has looked better of late.
Yeah, I'm only really interested in a few guys here. Jose Abreu, excellent option, but like at that same price, I think I'm leaning Mitch Moreland. I don't hate Daniel Palka as a power threat here, and like Yoan Moncada, who is probably going to strike out 3-4 times that he faces Fiers. If he gets to a fourth, maybe he hits a home run on that fourth one, but like he does have a ton of power against those low velocity fastballs.
Like, I don't mind Moncada and GBP. He's still fairly cheap 4-1 with that power. But yeah, like you said, the downside's there.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess keep an eye on like Jose Rondon, who's been getting in the lineup a decent amount recently. Has been hitting really, really well. He's a young guy that just came up for the White Sox not too long ago.
Houston and Cleveland next here. Corey Kluber taking on Dallas Keuchel. Kluber 10-8 man on DraftKings. Like, I like that price quite a bit.
Yeah, like I realize that like James Paxton is in a really, really good spot, and we'll get to that here shortly. And like I realize that Scherzer is in a really, really good spot. But my God, Corey Kluber at 10-8. I get that it's the Astros, but we've been down this road so many times this season. Like this Astros team is not hitting the way that they were last season. They're striking out like 22% of the time this year. We just saw Corey Kluber in this exact same spot go 7 innings, 10 strikeouts, gave up 2 earned runs. But like this is a really, really good spot for Kluber, and he's probably going to be lower owned than the Thors and the Scherzers and the Paxtons.
I think so too. I really like him. I mean, over 30% strikeout rate against both sides of the play dating back to last year. Yeah, we just look at this Houston team not making a lot of great contact. Just really haven't been great this year alone. I know they're still pretty, like they're shown as a top 10 offense, but we've seen offenses be down this year. So that like 9-10 ranked offense is not as good as it seems.
No, it's really not. Like, what is their? They're a 104 WRC plus at like, and they're ranked number ninth in against right-handed pitching. League average WRC plus is generally like 100, so they're barely above league average, and they're a top 10 offense. So that's telling you something.
Yeah, he's just got such good stuff. Like Kluber, an absolute machine. Definitely like a top 3 guy here for me, and points per dollar wise might be my favorite.
I think he's like outside of Scherzer, my number 2.
Yeah. And I'm not picking on him here. Are you?
No.
I don't mind taking a couple shots against Keuchel, though. Like Keuchel, I don't have any interest in using here tonight on this slate. But I do think there's a couple interesting options against him.
Now, I will say Marwin does have some BVP against Kluber. Over the last 5 seasons, 14 at-bats, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, a 500 batting average.
Ooh. BV team would be super interesting on this slate because of all the pitching.
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious what you get.
Yeah. On the flip side, I actually have a decent amount of interest as far as like these Indians bats go. Like, you look at the way like Jose Ramirez and Francisco Lindor match up in this spot. Like, I know they're expensive, but they actually both match up really, really well against Keuchel. Like, against that two-seam fastball that he's throwing, like Jose Ramirez has like a 252 ISO. Francisco Lindor a 245 ISO against it. And then like the rest of these bats are super, super cheap.
Yeah, I mean, like E5 as well, like 3.8, definitely interesting. I mean, you're going to get like Yan Gomes and probably a couple platoon right-handed bats in the bottom. I'm with you. Like Keuchel hasn't been that great this season. 173 ISO to righties, a little bit up by his standards. Hasn't shown a ton of strikeout stuff either. Like the only thing that he obviously does well is, limit hard contact and ground balls. But, some of these guys have just hit sinkers and two-seamers incredibly well.
Yeah, and don't overlook like Cabrera is projected to get in the lineup. He's very, very cheap. You mentioned Yan Gomes, who is freaking like 3,100, really, really cheap. And then like the Greg Allens, the Rajai Davises, the Eric Gonzalez's, these guys actually hit lefties pretty darn well. I mean, I know Rajai's numbers are terrible. That's because he's Rajai Davis, but like some of these guys hit lefties pretty darn well and are really, really cheap.
Rajai once hit lefties well. There was a time in life.
Yeah, it was fun 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't think Cleveland will be terribly popular either.
No, and like Melky Cabrera, I mentioned him, not a lot of power against like those sinkers, but like 346 WOBA, like 94% contact rate. He's just a guy that would be really good to get on base here.
Yeah. Next one here, we got Washington, Miami, Max Scherzer taking on Jose Urena. The only real knock here for Scherzer is the $14K price tag on DraftKings. I don't know if I'm going to pay it because there's, Kluber in 10, there's Syndergaard, Severino, all these guys are, 3-4K cheaper. You can pair him with a cheaper option. I think that's how I would go if I wanted to use Scherzer here tonight. Obviously, it's a spot, and he's Max Scherzer.
Yeah, like I don't really know if we need to even talk about Scherzer. Like I know he's expensive, but like out of all the pitchers going tonight, he has probably the highest likelihood of going like a complete game in this spot. Like we've seen it. We've seen him go like 120 pitches. He has double-digit strikeout upside. If you want to play him. Like it just comes down to that. Like he's the safe. I think he's the safest pitcher on the entire slate. So there's that for cash games. There you go.
Yeah, like I mean, I think pairing like on FanDuel you can certainly use him. Where he's a little bit cheaper and you just need one pitcher. And I think on DK, like I don't know if I'm pairing him with another expensive pitcher. Like I think it's like the Lopez and Striplings of the world, or maybe even diving completely down and like using it with him and trying to get some bats, because it's manageable to get Scherzer in there and some Coors exposure with a cheap SP2.
Yeah, it's manageable, and I'm sure on like fantasy draft it's probably doable as well. I haven't tried to build a lineup over there yet, but I'm sure it's doable there too.
Yeah. We don't need to talk Miami bats here, unless you want to talk like a cheap one-off lefty bat that like gets the one homer, but
Justin Bour.
Yeah, that'd be it. Who's 2.8.
Yeah, that'd be about it.
Other side things here, Urena. Washington told us right at 4. It's not a great ballpark. I don't mind taking some of the lefties here against Urena. 36% hard contact to him dating back to last year. Urena's a guy like he's not that great. He just kind of starts to limit like big outings. Like he's a guy who goes 5-6 innings and just kind of allows casually like 3 to 4 runs.
Yeah, I mean, I still really like the Washington lefties in this spot, like Matt Adams, and you're looking at Adams, Harper, Soto, and Wilmer Defoe. They're all great options. Like Matt Adams, I think is one of my favorites, just because that price tag on DraftKings like $4K, a really really solid price for him. But the lefties are where I would go. They're one of my favorite. Like I think contrarian stacks in the spot.
Yeah, like I mean, you have Soto, Harper, Adams as the lefties. Like I don't mind mixing in a Trey Turner or Anthony Rendon in this spot to complete it. Soto's still really cheap, 3.4. Obviously, a guy with some power. Young guy with a ton of upside. Like I don't mind using him quite a bit here today at those price tags.
Yeah, and who knows? Like maybe they roll out more lefties, like Andrew Stevenson, who I believe is still with the team. He played a couple days ago. I haven't seen that he got sent down. He's another lefty that could get in the lineup. If they load up lefties in this lineup, I definitely would have a little more interest. But you mentioned Soto, just really, really cheap. Adams, again, lefties in this spot.
Yeah. Kansas City, Texas next here. Mike Meyer take on Eric Skoglund. One of the higher totals on the night in this one. Texas 5.2 runs here. I still don't know if I'm going to be really liking them, but I do like a couple of bats in this spot.
Has Texas ever gone over like a 5-run total ever in the history of their franchise ever?
Against the Yankees in all 3 games.
There you go. This offense is so bad at times. It's ridiculous. But this is a pretty good spot against Skoglund, just because he has just been so bad against righties, and you're going to get some decent righties in this lineup. You're looking at Jurickson Profar, who's been just on fire recently. I actually really like him, especially at that price. He's a really, really good option here. And Robinson Chirinos, I think, is my favorite Texas bat.
Yeah, dude's got some pop. Obviously, still really cheap. I don't mind DeShields leading off here either, 3-4. He even has some stolen base upside against a lefty. I think if I'm stacking this one, I'm game stacking it because I can't find complete stacks on both sides.
I mean, you could complete the a 4-man stack of Texas with DeShields, Kiner-Fleff, Profar, Chirinos. Or you could throw Ryan Rua in there, who's really, really cheap. It's what is his price on DraftKings? I know it's
Rua?
Yeah, he's
27. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a decent option, I think, in this spot. But you could complete the stack with Texas bats. Like I said, I think Profar is my favorite option, and then Chirinos.
Yeah, I like Whit Merrifield in this spot as well. I don't mind Soler or Perez as far as options too. On the other side, they're just another team where I can't get a complete stack in. But I do really like Whit Merrifield. I did a little bit about the stacking article just on both sides in this one. I do think it is kind of a boomer bust spot for the Royals though as well.
Yeah, it's always a boomer bust spot for the Royals. Hit Merrifield. You can't call him Witt. He's hit Merrifield. Um, actually been heating up a little bit recently. I think he's got some pretty decent numbers recently. He's been running. He ran what 3 stolen bases in a game against the Yankees earlier last week. I do like the spot for him, Salvador Perez, and then I actually really like Jorge Soler. Like I know he doesn't profile great against some of the pitches that Minor is throwing. Like his contact numbers are terrible, but like Jorge Soler's contact numbers against like everything are terrible. But a decent power bat here.
Yeah, and I mean against that fastball range, like 398 WOBA, 260 ISO, like he's got to jump on the fastballs here.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's not a bad game here. It's a warm game. Wind blowing in a little bit, but there's definitely some options here in this one.
Yeah, it's like 90s and humid, so I would definitely get some exposure to this game.
Yeah. Mets and Brewers next year. Junior Guerra take on Noah Syndergaard. Syndergaard's line is jumping all over the place because now he's like a -116, and Brewers are back under 4. I don't mind him here. Like he's 10-5. We've talked about Syndergaard quite a few times this year, and just he's not unlucky with his ERA. He's unlucky as far as like going deeper into games and getting wins.
He's unlucky because he has like the worst defense in baseball behind him.
Yeah, it also there is something to him though. He does work a ton of pitches per batter.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the downsides to him. He really should be going deeper into games. I just would like to see him kind of rely on some of the off-speed stuff a little bit more.
Yeah, I can agree there. Like I will say at that price, he's really, really interesting as like a cash game guy, just because this Brewers offense, like I know they've heated up a little bit of late, but still striking out a lot. And Thor is a guy with a decent amount of strikeouts potential in this spot.
And usually the guys I worry about are like Shaw and Yelich and stuff from the left side against some of these righties. But I mean, Syndergaard, 32% strikeout rate dating back to last year, 266 WOBA allowed to left-handers. A guy who's allowed under 100 ISO to both sides of the plate. Like he's just such a solid arm, and I like him here. I don't mind him in GPPs. I know we haven't flashed the GPP upside a lot this year, but I think it is there tonight. But I do like him in cash as well. He's up there as well just because he's so cheap for Thor at 10-5, and I get it's not the greatest ballpark in the world, and obviously this team is heating up a little bit, but yeah, there's some strikeout potential here.
Yeah, and you want to know the only time this season he flashed GPP upside was against this Brewers team. Went 5.1 with 11 strikeouts.
So just play like Luis Castillo and Thor against Milwaukee always.
There you go.
I'm not really picking on Thor here tonight with anyone.
No, I'm not either.
Mets side things here. Junior Guerra. There's a couple of cheap bats. I don't actually hate Guerra here either at 6'6".
No, he's the guy I put in the cheat sheets, like decent strikeout potential, like 22% dating back to last season. This Mets offense strikes out about 21.5% of the time against right-handed pitching. Does struggle with fly balls a little bit, does struggle with hard contact a little bit, but like this Mets offense is also absolutely terrible. Just absolutely terrible.
Yeah, like he's got a pretty decent, it's his fastball that really gets him into trouble. Like he's got a pretty good splitter, obviously 44% whiff rate. Like the slider's not bad. I don't think it's as bad as the 348, 209 ISO allowed this year, but yeah, I think he's viable as like an SP2 at 6'6". This Mets team is just, it's really not that good.
No, it's really not. Like you're worried a little bit about like I guess Jay Bruce and Asdrubal Cabrera and maybe like Wilmer Flores and of course Conforto, but like I just don't really have interest in any of these guys.
Yeah, like I think Brandon Nemo's probably my favorite option of this group.
Yeah, he's probably the cheapest of the group.
Yeah, he's 3'6", and he's been a guy he's been a solid on base guy this year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, overall, a game that we're not expecting a ton from. Next one here, we got Cincinnati and Colorado. John Gray take on Sal Romano. This is a night where I'm okay getting exposure to Coors because there's not a ton of other options.
No, there's really not. Like I do have I do have some concerns with, the whole Coors effect as far as teams playing their first game in Coors, and that's something like I've seen talked about a lot already today. But like both of these pitchers really suck against left-handers, and both of these lineups have some interesting left-handed bats in here, and like you get like some of these guys against John Gray, who actually I think might be tournament viable if you're trying to reach really, really deep. But like Jesse Winker is really, really cheap at 3,800. Scooter Gennett, pretty cheap at 4,800. Joey Votto, not terribly priced. Like if you're stacking them up, you'd stack the lefties and maybe throw in a Tucker Barnhart.
Yeah, who hit second last game? He's projected to hit second again here. Like you could get 5 out of the first 6 lefties, or five out of the 6 first batters are going to be probably left-handed. That does spell trouble, I think, for Gray here a little bit. I mean, this year, like lefties have hit him pretty hard, 39%, 259 ISO. Against that 95-mile-per-hour fastball, a lot of these guys match up really well. All those lefties that we just mentioned, over 200 ISO against that, and the contact rates are pretty high. I'm definitely okay with the red stack. I know, like you said, like it's the first game, and we've seen kind of teams just be awful that first game and maybe get going later on, but I don't mind jumping on board here.
No, I don't. Like Winker, I think is my favorite option. Like he's a guy I'm just going to be having a lot of exposure to just in general, but like Schebler hasn't shown like a ton of power against that pitch. Like he's got like a 203 ISO, but like 50% hard contact on it. He's just not making that much contact with him.
Yeah. So I feel like I was looking at something real quick, but yeah. Colorado side, this has been an offense I just, God, I hate the target this year, but they're another one. Like the lefties are in a great spot. Sal Romano's been awful dating back to last year against them, and then this year alone he's been horrible. I don't mind like the Charlie Blackmons, and the other couple of outfielders are all under 4K on DraftKings. Like I don't mind exposure here. I'm just sick of playing them a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, it's the lefties, and like I guess if you wanted to sprinkle in like a Nolan Arenado or whatever, sure. But like Charlie Blackmon, obviously the top option here, has pretty much raked against all of Sal Romano's pitches. Romano is allowing like a 286 ISO on his four seam. It averages like 94 miles an hour. Blackmon 296 ISO against it. Against sinkers, he's 234 ISO. Romano's allowing like a 444 ISO on that pitch. So I love Blackmon. I hope David Dahl gets in the lineup and it's not like Cargo or Para. I wish neither one of those guys ever got in the lineup, like ever again. But like Dahl would be one of my favorite options at like 4,200 from that lineup, because he's really cheap. And I mean, Gonzalez and Para are 3,900 on DraftKings. So I guess if you're dying to get exposure, you can get one of those guys.
Yeah, I'd probably go Cargo, but yeah, like you said, I mean, they're cheap, they're exposure, they're in a good spot based off Romano's lefty numbers this year, but they just haven't been good.
Yeah, I mean, like Para's been significantly better than Cargo this season. Like when I say significantly, like I mean pretty significantly, like 20% better. Just looking at like WRC plus, but like it's still not good.
No, and like neither of them are making a lot of hard contacts, especially Cargo.
No, not at all.
So, God, it's not. Maybe Hanley goes there tonight.
I will say Cargo does have like a almost 50% fly ball rate against righties this season. It's just he's not hitting it very hard, like 28% hard contact.
It's probably, I haven't watched a lot of Rockies baseball, but it's probably a lot of like to the track fly balls.
Probably like infield fly balls.
Oh yeah, what is his rate? Hold on real quick.
I don't have that in front of me. It's probably
it's only 3.8%, but dude has a 25% soft contact rate this year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Later games here doesn't get really appealing for offenses in this next one. Oakland and Arizona, Sean Manaea versus Patrick Corbin. I really like Manaea in this spot. I think both pitchers are viable, but I really like Manaea in GPPs just against this Arizona team that, God, looking at that lineup, it's so bad.
Yeah, it is pretty bad. Like, I it's just tough. Like Manaea's just been really bad this month. Like 5.96 ERA and 4 May starts. He's allowed 3 or more earned runs in each of those starts. This would be a good bounce back spot for him though against this putrid Diamondbacks team. I like him in tournaments. Again, not a guy you're going with in cash, but like, man, if he relies on that slider more than he has of late, like this could be a really good spot for him because as we talked about with pitchers all season long against the Diamondbacks, they really, really suck against sliders.
Yeah. Did you find, like, I looking through, like, I know he struggled to like 400 runs in 3 of his last 4 starts. I talk about him a little bit in the pitching article, and I kind of thought like a lot of those teams he struggled against saw him twice. Like Seattle, Houston, Boston, and obviously guys, still talented offenses. Like I think they jumped around on him the second time. So I do think he has an advantage against an Arizona team that just hasn't seen him.
Yeah, that very well could be the case.
But yeah, like he's just a GPP guy. There's a lot of upside. Those numbers against lefties, if you look as a team, it's basically been strictly AJ Pollock and Paul Goldschmidt, and Pollock's gone. And Nick Ahmed, of course. I know. You were about ready to jump all over
actually, me. He wasn't the guy I was going to mention. How dare you ignore John Ryan Murphy?
Oh, sorry, in his 419 ISO this year.
There you go. I will say, like, Paul Goldschmidt at 3.9 on DraftKings is really, really cheap.
If you've been not playing him against lefties over these last few games at these prices, shame on you.
He's 3.9 on FanDuel too. Like, that's really cheap for Paul Goldschmidt. Like, I don't hate like a one-off of Goldie here against Manaea.
No, I don't know. He's the only guy that I have interest in on the Diamondback side. And Oakland side of things here, like Corbin's a guy with some strikeout upside and continues to throw that slider quite a bit. This is a lineup that's, missing Chris Davis and pop from the right side. I know they do have a couple other power guys, but Corbin's a guy with some strikeout upside here as well, and obviously in a pretty spacious ballpark.
Yeah, it's a pretty good spot for him. He's a guy, like, if you're not wanting to pay all the way up to like into the double digits for pitching, I think Corbin's a fine option. There are a couple bats that I do have a little bit of concern here against him, mostly Matt Chapman and Mark Canha, but he's definitely a fine option. I would like to see the strikeouts start to climb a little bit more because he's like, if you look at his overall strikeout rates for this season, like it looks like he's been really good because I think it's like 33% so far this season, but he's had some games where it dips into like the low 20s, and that is a little concerning. I think it has to do with the velocity being down. And then like his overall strikeout rate, 33.3%, but like that's definitely propped up by the games against the Padres and the Dodgers where he has like a 50% strikeout rate.
Yeah, there was a couple where like he had double digits in like 6-7 innings. And I think that those Giant starts too, where he didn't go terribly deep, but he had like 9 strikeouts.
Yeah, like one Giant start was like 39.1% strikeout rate. So I would like to see the strikeouts come up a little bit for him. And like I said, that probably has to do with the velocity and how he's changed around his pitch mix a little bit.
Yeah, and that could happen here tonight. I mean, projected line of 23.4% strikeout rate against lefties. Not a lot of great contact guys here either.
No, but they do hit the ball really freaking hard.
Yeah, they do. You like him, Chapman. I definitely don't mind him here. Chad Pender's always a guy that'll have some interest in against the lefty. Marcus Semien's kind of interesting as well here.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to stack them up for whatever reason, it would be Pender, Chapman, Semien, and like Canha for me.
Yeah, if we're looking like late slate or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Padres and Dodgers. Clayton Richard taking on Ross Stripling. Ross Stripling's a guy I talked about in the pitching article. He's up to 7,200. A guy he's got solid stuff. Like he's good. He's a guy who throws that slider. And he's got that good command on the slider as well. And he's good against lefties. Like he's a great matchup here for the Padres. And you mentioned chalk Stripling, and I'm completely okay with that.
I'm fine at that price. Like I don't really care about his ownership. Like I know he's going to be super popular, but this is a guy we've seen the strikeout upside for him. I mean, talking like 25, almost 26% dating back to last season. We just saw him a couple of games ago shut down a very potent like Washington offense, and then he comes in and faces a very not potent Padres offense like that is striking out like 26, almost 27% of the time against right-handed pitching this season. 100% okay with using Stripling in the spot. Good park. Great. Just a great matchup. Like, I don't hate using him here.
Yeah, he's the guy. I mean, worked into the sixth in that Cincinnati start, had 7 strikeouts, 2 earned. Went 6 innings. This is a guy we've always talked about. He's like, oh, he's not stretched out. He's going to go 3 to 4 innings. We're not picking on him, but we can't really use him yet. And now we can finally use him. And looking back, this is a guy who did make 16 starts in 2016. Like, he can go 6 innings here, and it's a good spot. I can't guarantee he'll win because this Dodgers offense has been awful. And I think Clayton Richards is the guy who can actually limit them as well. But, Stripling a guy at these prices, like a great SP2, or if you're looking in the later slates, like definitely a guy you should be using.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So, any interest in any Padres bats at all?
No.
LA here. Richard a little bit cheaper. He's 6'4". In a pretty good ballpark against a team that really hasn't done much against lefties this year.
No, and we've seen him. Slightly improved over his last 3 games. He's pitched into the 8th inning. It's a decent spot for him. I realize the Dodgers run total is over 4, and you look at this lineup and you're like, oh, Justin Turner, Matt Kemp, Chris Taylor, Grandal, all these guys should be hitting lefties pretty well, but this offense as a whole, 87 WRC plus, are one of the worst offenses in baseball against lefties. 22% strikeout rate. Richard is a very interesting, cheap option here. He's not someone you're looking in cash. If you're playing cash, just pay the extra 800 for Stripling. But in tournaments, I definitely don't mind him here.
No, I don't either. With you, I'm not buying that run total for LA. It's come down a little bit since last night, but there's really only a few bats. It's, Justin Turner, and I do think Chris Taylor's interesting. I do think he especially is interesting on DK because he's shortstop eligible at 3.9. He's a guy who's heated up a little bit over the last week and a half. It's just really him and Turner here for me, or maybe a Matt Kemp, but that's about it.
Yeah, and obviously you have Kike Hernandez, who's the platoon guy against lefties. You can roll him out if you want, but it's pretty much just Turner if I'm looking anywhere at this lineup.
Last game here, we got Minnesota and Seattle. Fernando Romero take on James Paxton. Paxton bounced back the second time around against the Tigers, complete game. I really like Paxton here tonight. He's one of the more expensive guys. He's 11.9, so he's above Kluber and Thor, but it is a good spot for him. I know Minnesota got Sano back, but that also had some strikeouts as well. There's a lot of lefties in this lineup, which oddly Paxton has given up some power to this year, but the strikeout stuff is really there for Paxton tonight.
Yeah, there's just really no reason I don't think, to fear this Twins offense. They're striking out 25% of the time. You mentioned you get Sano back, and he's striking out a lot. You get Buxton, who's 0 for his last 400 plate appearances. So he's basically guaranteed strikeouts at this point. You're obviously worried about a couple guys in this lineup, but the strikeouts and the potential is there for Paxton. I don't know that there's a whole lot that needs to be said for him.
No, I'm with you. And I don't really have any interest in picking on him either. I know there's a couple of guys that do hit lefties well, but we haven't particularly seen it this year. I think something's up with Dozier. The hard contact extremely down, especially against lefties.
Probably tired of shouldering the offensive load for the Twins.
Yeah.
His back is sore.
And Sano getting in the lineup, just big strikeout stuff here. Obviously, the dude has a ton of power, but Eduardo Escobar's been their best lefty hitter this year.
Yeah, he has. And I'm not too terribly worried about him here.
No. Romero on the other side, obviously a young arm who has been pitching well for the Twins. One of the few pitchers who's been pitching well this year for him. I don't mind him here. I think he's interesting at 7.7. He's shown some strikeout stuff. He hasn't gone terribly deep into games, but a guy who will throw that slider quite a bit. And there's not a lot of guys that really grade out particularly well outside of maybe Haniger.
No, it's a decent spot for him. Obviously, you do have to worry a little bit about Ryan Healy and Nelson Cruz and Haniger, but he's a guy. I think he's a fine tournament option again. A pivot off of Stripling. He has some strikeout potential definitely here. It's a good option.
Yeah. And Haniger's really the only guy that I'll have some interest in on this spot.
Yeah, like I said, it would be Healy, Cruz, and maybe Haniger for me. I guess if you wanted to sprinkle in a stack and get some Zunino, that would be the way to go.
Home run calls Gonna be interesting who we go with here tonight. Who do you got?
Mitch Moreland. And going back to some Jerks and Profar, continuing the hot streak.
Ooh. I am going to go Ozzy Albies and Whit Merrifield, so a couple second basemen here.
There you go.
That's it for us. We're off for the weekend. We'll be back Monday. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com.
We will not be back Monday.
Oh, we're not back Monday. Yeah, it's Memorial Day.
Yeah, that's right. So enjoy your holiday weekend, everybody.
Yeah, that's right. As we will too. So I'm going to sleep.
I'm definitely going to do pretty much nothing but sleeping. And yeah, that's about it.
That's what we're supposed to do on Memorial Day, right?
I guess.
Sleep until 11.
That's a good plan to me.
That's it for us. We'll be back Tuesday, and good luck tonight.
Good luck.